Dumas, written and narrated by Marcus S. Wyatt. Preface. The first time the remarkable life and death of Alexander Dumas pere told. Dumas, a founder of the French Renaissance, first to write French dramatic theater, the great-great-grandfather of French romantic literature, considered the greatest chef of his time, was a cavalier. The son of the great general of the French Revolution, General Dumas, betrayed by Napoleon, to become the model figure to compel D'Artagnan and Edmond Dantes. The epic life of Dumas surpasses any adventures from any books, which inspires the world forever. Chapter 1. Recipes from a Novelist. Roscoff, France, 1869. Alexander Dumas, 67 years old, has 2 packed bags, enters a carriage, and takes off. The carriage arrives at a church. Dumas sits with the priest. "Reverend, these are curious times, when all I have to depend on is writing a cookbook. I have nothing by me but this voucher from the Dictionary of Cuisine. Take it for my last chapter, The Art of Dressing Salad. I call it salad dressing. I think the world shall love it too. Collect the money for the book yourself. I want to make confession." "Yes, my son." "Father, I have been the most prolific spendthrift of my time, having spent more than anyone else of my era, both with my creative energy and my money. I have too many earthly needs. I wanted to break all records and be the first to do so. Now, when my first son comes to visit me, I hide women in closets and my female assistants in the attic, for he will scold me as his mother did. But he rarely visits me. I only see my son at funerals. The people of Paris yell at me as I walk up the street. During half a century, Europe swore by me. America sent fleets of boats to fetch my novels. My plays were performed in Egypt to delight the great Pasha. My hand blackened mountains of paper. I have had 100 new plays performed. I published 1,000 novels. I've commanded legions, taken part in 20 duels, fought in 24 lawsuits, chartered ships, and distributed pensions from my pocket. I have danced, hunted, loved, fished, hypnotized, cooked, made tens of millions, and spent more. I am like one of those trees crowned with a body of foliage, which at noon is full of silent birds that wake up at close of day. Then, when evening has come, they feel their joy, their love, their clamor. These birds live in the tree until death, in its turn, lays down its hospitable home, and the tree in falling frightens away all those happy songsters, of which each bird is simply an hour of my life." The priest says, "Find solace and peace in serving heaven, my son. Be grounded in serving him. Go on, my son." I was 27. I was young. The year was 1829. It was my first play on a major stage at the Royal Palace Theatre. The actors were difficult, but that mattered not. The only thing important was my work was on stage. We were in rehearsals. A play by yours truly, from playwright Alexander Dumas. Chapter 1. Recipes from a Novelist. Roscoff, France, 1869. Alexander Dumas, 67 years old, has 2 packed bags, enters a carriage, and takes off. The carriage arrives at a church. Dumas sits with the priest. "Reverend, these are curious times, when all I have to depend on is writing a cookbook. I have nothing by me but this voucher from the Dictionary of Cuisine. take it for my last chapter, The Art of Dressing Salad. I call it salad dressing. I think the world shall love it too. Collect the money for the book yourself. I want to make confession. Yes, my son. Father, I have been the most prolific spendthrift of my time, having spent more than anyone else of my era, both with my creative energy and my money. I have too many earthly needs. I wanted to break all records and be the first to do so. Now, when my first son comes to visit me, I hide women in closets and my female assistants in the attic, for he will scold me as his mother did. But he rarely visits me. I only see my son at funerals. The people of Paris yell at me as I walk up the street. During half a century, Europe swore by me. America sent fleets of boats to fetch my novels. My plays were performed in Egypt to delight the great Pasha. My hand blackened mountains of paper. I have had 100 new plays performed. I published 1,000 novels. I've commanded legions, taken part in 20 duels, fought in 24 lawsuits, chartered ships, and distributed pensions from my pocket. I have danced, hunted, loved, fished, hypnotized, cooked, made tens of millions, and spent more. I am like one of those trees crowned with a body of foliage, which at noon is full of silent birds that wake up at close of day. Then, when evening has come, they feel their joy, their love, their clamor. These birds live in the tree until death, in its turn, lays down its hospitable home, and the tree in falling frightens away all those happy songsters, of which each bird is simply an hour of my life. The priest says, "Find solace and peace in serving heaven, my son. Be grounded in serving him. Go on, my son." I was 27. I was young. The year was 1829. It was my first play on a major stage at the Royal Palace Theatre. The actors were difficult, but that mattered not. The only thing important was my work was on stage. We were in rehearsals. A play by yours truly, from playwright Alexander Dumas. Chapter 2. Founder of Romance Theatre in France. The year is 1829 at the Royal Palace Theatre. Actors are on stage rehearsing. The house is empty except for one seat center. Alexander Dumas watches rehearsal. Dumas says, "End scene. That was excellent. Take a break." The actors do. They come off stage into the house. Dumas rises from his seat with his papers and heads up the aisle. Firmin, an actor of 40 years old, holds a script and begins to complain to Dumas. "It is my firm conviction, such a monotonous part from the first to the fifth act does nothing but repeat the same thing over and over again." "So that is the effect my play produces on you?" Dumas asks. Firmin answers, "Yes." Dumas implies, "It does not surprise me. It is exactly what I wished it would do." Firmin insists, "I have warned you. Remember." He walks away. Dumas rises and walks out, as Madame Mars follows after him, to his office in the Royal Palace Theatre. Dumas in his miserable little office space at the Royal Palace, surrounded by dusty files. He finds a note, opens it, and reads it. It's from Nodier. "It is my true and honest opinion that your play is one of the most remarkable works which I have read for 20 years. Signed, Charles Nodier." Mademoiselle Mars pays a visit entering the office. Mars says to Dumas, "Have it your way then. Your lines will be spoken, but I think you will not be a little surprised when you see the effect they produce." Mars sweeps out on these words. The Royal Palace Theatre that evening. Dumas watches the actors' rehearsal from the first row of the empty theater. Mademoiselle Mars center stage. Cut! The author is going to delete the next few lines. Dumas exclaims, the author is going to do nothing of the sort. I insist on you speaking them. The actor Garnier says to himself, Ah, diable. Dumas asks, what do you mean by ah, diable? Garnier says, I mean that if Mars does not wish to speak your lines, then our lines will remain unspoken. Dumas insists, if the piece is going to be played, then she's got to speak them. Garnier laughs to himself, yes, if, but it won't be. Later at the royal palace, Garnier sees Dumas locking up the office door. Garnier says to him, Dumas, write another play and give the lead part to Mademoiselle Mars. Avoid monologues. Be very careful not to cross her on anything, and you'll be certain of a production. Dumas replies, one may only write how one writes. Garnier says, suit yourself. Dumas gives in, I shall try to dig up a new play. The two men part. Outside the Royal Palace Theater, Dumas carries his papers, putting them into his leather satchel. A carriage draws up and comes to a halt. The door opens. Mademoiselle Duval, the most exquisite seductress, reveals herself. Are you Monsieur Alexander Dumas? Duval asks. Dumas replies, yes. Duval says, very well, come inside and kiss me. Ah, you possess marvelous talent and you don't write women's roles badly either. He enters the carriage and sits opposite her. She lifts her dress, revealing her garters. Duval says to him, I want to show you something beautiful. Dumas sees, then peers deep into her eyes. The Royal Palace Theater the next evening. A messenger runs into the theater, spots Dumas alone in the seats. The page rushes to Dumas and hands him a note. Dumas rushes out of the theater. Actors rehearsing on stage hesitate, yet continue rehearsing. Dumas' home later. Dumas enters the flat. He sees a lantern glowing from his mother's bedroom. He comes to the doorway. She is weak and ill. A doctor speaks to Dumas. The doctor says, she had a stroke. She needs rest. Dumas asks, may I see her? The doctor answers, yes, but she needs rest. Much rest. Dumas assures him, I shall be only a moment. Dumas enters the room at his mother's bedside. He kisses her, then sits in the chair and holds her hand as she sleeps. Oh, mother, he says. The Royal Palace, the next day. The Prince of France, Le Duc d'Orléans, sits in his princely chair. When Dumas enters with a bow, the prince gestures for Dumas to sit. He does. Dumas asks, Your Highness, I have come to ask a favor. My play Henry III is being played for the first time. Will you do me the honor of being present? In the past, your Royal Highness has passed sentence upon me rather too quickly. Tomorrow, the play is to receive a public trial. You would be doing me a great kindness by being in court when the verdict is given. Prince Duc d'Orléans says, Nothing would give me more pleasure, yet 30 princes and princesses are being entertained at dinner that evening. Dumas says, If you, sire, will advance the hour of your dinner, I will postpone the opening of my play, so that your august guest may have the opportunity to witness a very curious spectacle. Prince Duc d'Orléans says, Damn, that's an idea, Dumas. Tell Taylor I wish to reserve all of the circle. The Royal Palace Theater that evening. Victor Hugo and Alfred de Vigny see Dumas in front of the theater. Hugo and de Vigny say, Monsieur Dumas, Monsieur Dumas. Dumas turns. Hugo adds, Sir, may we address you? Dumas says, But of course. Hugo says, Victor Hugo, at your service. De Vigny includes, Maestro Dumas, I am Alfred de Vigny. Dumas, stunned, says, To such poets, the honor is mine. Hugo adds, Dumas, we are unable to get tickets for this evening's opening night performance. Dumas says, Here, I will place you in my sister's box with Catherine and my son, little Alex. Hugo graciously says, Monsieur, thank you. De Vigny adds, Thank you, monsieur. The Royal Palace Theater that evening. The audience enters the house in gowns and furs. Dumas stands still backstage in the wings. Dumas thinks to himself, the theater remains the ultimate tool of my ambitions. Oh, that terrible demon that seizes you awake or sleeping and transforms drawing rooms into theaters, candle bras into footlights, fireplaces into prompter's boxes, who whispers Cid in one ear, Figaro into another, pursuing you with a distant thunder of applause. The curtain rises. Dumas stares from backstage behind the curtain. Dumas thinks, the rising of the curtain on the first scene of the first performance of my first play is the most violent emotion of my life. Amongst princes, princesses, journalists, and politicians. Chapter 3. Father and Son. Villers-Cotterêts, France, 1806. Ill-ridden General Dumas with young Alex at his side. General Dumas at home, with his son in the forest. Ah, the forest of my love, and this time with my son at my side. General Dumas shoots at a stag and misses. A pain conquers him. They go to horse and ride on. Next morning, Marat and Brune luncheon with General Dumas and young Alex. General Dumas says, Alex, put Brune's sword between your legs and Marat's hat upon your head and gallop around the table. Young Alex does as told. Don't ever forget, my child, how today you have ridden around the table on Brune's sword and had Marat's hat on your head. France, 1850. A mature Dumas remembers. See, my father, how well I have remembered all the incidents you bade me recollect. And since I came to years of discretions, my memories of you have lived in me like a sacred lamp, illuminating everything and every person you had ever laid a finger on, although time has destroyed those things, and death taken away those persons. Moreover, I pay tribute of respect to the memory of both those two men, to the one at Avignon and to the other at Pisa, when 10 years later they were both assassinated, within 2 months of each other. I put flowers down. General Dumas' home, 1806. The general is in his library alone next to the fireplace. Young Alex, 4 years old, peeks through the library door ajar and stares intensely. General Dumas says to himself out loud, Oh God, God, my God. Must a general, who at the age of 35 was the head of 3 armies, die in his bed like a coward at 40? Now Bonaparte is Emperor of France. God, what have I done that thou wouldst condemn one so young to leave his wife and children? Later. It is quiet. The candles on the table give a holy glow. General Dumas lays dying in bed. The doctor leaves the room as little Alex goes to his father's bedside. He cries into the pillow, Son, see this cane? It saved my life in the prisons of Brindisi when those Neapolitan ruffians tried to assassinate me. Look to it that it never leaves me. Let it be with me when I am buried. For my son, you aren't old enough to know its value, and it would only be lost before you are old enough to use it. See, the head is gold. Well, then I cannot leave my children sufficiently well off to deprive them of the money that this knob might fetch, little though it may be. Take the cane to the goldsmith, Duguet, who will melt it down into a nugget. Then let him bring the nugget directly to me when he's done. The priest gives last words. The general turns to his wife, dies in her arms. The clock strikes midnight. The priest leaves and Marie Dumas closes the door. Young Alex goes to his father's gun rack. Where are you going? I'm going to the sky. And what are you going to do in the sky? I'm going to kill God who has killed Papa. She hugs him. You must not say things like that, my pet. We are already wretched enough as it is. Gypsy camp. Later. Marie and young Alex arrive at the gypsies' camp to have Alex's fortune read. There is a fire burning with a handful of gypsies cooking in the damp forest. In the most reserved manner, Marie and young Alex descend the one-horse carriage. No one pays them much mind as they ascend the stairs. The gypsy woman opens the door quietly. She welcomes them inside. A candlelight blazes, exposing the round table with the crystal ball. The gypsy woman sits in her chair. Marie and young Alex sit across from her. She begins to turn tarot cards over on the table and gaze into the crystal ball. Her eyes lift up into the eyes of Marie, then young Alex. The gypsy lady looks into her crystal ball and begins to read the fortune of young Alex. The candlelight makes a mystic light. The gypsy says, "You have come about your son, yes? I cannot tell you what your son is to become, madam. I can only see him through clouds and flashes of lightning, like a traveler who is crossing high mountains, reaching a height to which few men attain. I say, he will speak to them, although I cannot indicate the precise lines of your son's destiny. Your son belongs to that class of men we style rulers." "So my son is to become a king, then?" "No, I do not say your son is to become a king, but something similar. Something perhaps more desirable. Every king has not a crown upon his head and a scepter in his hand." Marie admits, "So much the better. I never envied Madame Bonaparte." Marie and young Alex enter the cottage. Young Alex opens the cottage door and walks out. Just as Marie comes out, follows slowly behind him. Young Alex stares at the noise coming from the distance. She puts her hands gently upon his shoulders with concern. They stare to know what is coming closer. Young Alex says, "Mother, France is surrounded. The enemy is charging through Villers-Cotterêts. It lies on the road of the invader. There, a carriage coming full tilt. Through the carriage curtain, it's the profile of Bonaparte! It is the Emperor!" Emperor Bonaparte, a legend, a colossus. And now he needs soldiers. Oh, the extrications of all of our mothers for the name Napoleon. Rich and poor, young and middle-aged, able and disabled alike, for disaster follows disaster. In a month, a king is back on the throne of France, and Emperor Bonaparte is exiled to the island of Elba. Backstage, later. Dumas goes to the stage manager. "Look here, I must run home during the intermissions to my mother's side to see how she is doing." Dumas exits the backstage door. Dumas runs across the promenade, down the stairs, and across the lane. Dumas comes to his flat. Marie, his mother, is in bed resting with a fire burning and a candle on the table next to her. Dumas consoles her. "Mother, how are you feeling?" Marie answers him, "Much better, Alex. Tell me about your play." Dumas says to her, "It is going well. The drama of the third act, in which the jealous Guise forces his wife to write the fatal note to Saint-Mérain, by taking her risk, gave great shocks, greeted with applause. I shall take care of you, mother. Have no fear." The Royal Palace Theatre, moments later. Dumas stands backstage watching the performance and the audience's reactions. At the end of the fourth act, pandemonium breaks loose. The entire house, including the prince, rises to its feet. The actors take their first bows. The cast take their final bows as cheers swell, filling the house. The applause reaches a height. Dumas walks from behind the curtain stage left. The crowd's standing ovation becomes too irresistible, and they rush the stage. People surround Dumas, shaking his hand. Dumas, humble, grateful, and joyously smiles, and greets the house's adulation. Hugo and Davigny squeeze through the crowd to shake Dumas' hand. Hugo says to him, "My turn is next. Congratulations, Dumas." The next morning at Dumas' flat, the room is filled with bouquets of flowers with ribbons and gifts. Dumas says to himself, "I wake to find myself famous." The Royal Palace Hall, the next day. Charles X sits upon the throne as he reprimands his son, the prince. Charles X says to him, "The play by Dumas, Henry III, is intended to represent the reigning monarchy." Prince Duc d'Orléans says, "Well, first, I do not beat my wife, and my wife does not cuckold me. and you have no more of a loyal subject. Charles X orders, the play Henry III is banned. Paris streets, the rain falls. Dumas stands on a wooden box giving a speech to passers-by who stop to listen. The police put obstructions on the lines for my play. I would have the police understand once and for all, I do not write plays with double meanings. Let them fully understand this, because I will not refer to this question again. The year is 1830. French dramatic art, with its powers to assimilate, ought not restrict herself to just France. She ought to seize upon world literature. It is the same way Napoleon conceived his empire. When Bonaparte was first consul and emperor, he also desired despotism. He acted differently than they do today. He took it boldly and openly. He was neither cunning nor a hypocrite. He did not swindle us out of our rights, one after the other, as is done now. Napoleon took everything in a single bound and single-handed. The lion has not the same methods as the fox. Those, messieurs, were great times. The empire both in its government and its epoch of tyranny. But let us remember that the loss of our liberty was largely made up for by glory. Dumas in his carriage one evening. Dumas reads his invitation to the royal ball. He carefully opens the envelope. Dumas thinks to himself, well, Prince Duc d'Orléans, I hesitate to accept, since the man I should see is the son of the king and queen who poisoned my father. Nevertheless, the royal palace ballroom, later. At the royal ball, the prince catches sight of Dumas. The prince has Dumas brought over to him. The prince says, Monsieur Dumas, if by chance the king does you the honor of addressing you, you know, in replying to him, you should neither address him as sire or his majesty, but simply king. Dumas assures him, yes, monsieur, I am acquainted with that fact. The prince, surprised, says, how do you know that? Dumas assures him, the words sire and majesty were profaned directly. They were given to the usurper, and no longer given to the legitimate monarch. The prince, Duc d'Orléans, reaches the entrance of the royal ball, just as King Charles X steps from his royal carriage. Hidden behind a fern, Dumas' eyes pierce through. They narrow with antipathy for King Charles X. Dumas overhears Charles X. What splendid weather for my Algerian fleet. This is a true Neapolitan fete, for we are dancing on the edge of a volcano. Chapter 4. When a Poet Finds Himself. Young Dumas is 17 years old when he catches sight of the first houses in the village, and the pond lay quiet and shining like a mirror at the foot of a valley. Adolphe de Laverne, a year younger than Alex, is walking its banks. Alex asks, what are you doing here? Adolphe tells him why I'm composing poetry. Alex asks him, poetry? Do you really write poetry? Adolphe confesses, why, yes, sometimes. Alex asks, so you are making verses to Louise then, aren't you? Adolphe, embarrassed and blushes, says, yes, she is to marry a foreigner, therefore the marriage must be prevented. Alex, surprised, asks, prevented? Adolphe says, yes, I've written verses. You write some too. Alex asks, I? Adolphe tells him, yes, you. You've been brought up with her. It will please her. Dumas confesses, but I do not know how to write poetry. Adolphe shrugs him off. Oh, nonsense. If you are in love, it comes of itself. Dumas knits his brow, but I am in love, and it hasn't come. Let me see your verses. Adolphe hands his pages to young Alex. Dumas' eyes widen. Heavens, it is beautiful. Oh, stop, look. There's a water hen. Shoo! De la Ponte's estate. Young Alex speaks to Master Cannon Gunner de la Ponte about his affairs of the heart. De la Ponte gives him advice. Believe me, my dear boy, there are other things in life besides pleasure and love. Hunting, dancing, and the silly ambitions of youth. There's work. Learn to work. That is the true way to happiness. In the bedroom of a young lady named Adele, Alex and Adele, who's 18 years old, make love in her bed. They kiss. He then slips out through the back door. Alex leaps over the walls with ease on his back root. When he leaps over a bale of hay, he encounters a man with a stick and a blackened face. The assailant fumbles in his pocket for a knife. Dumas seizes his wrist and manages to twist his fingers open, making the knife drop. Dumas picks up the knife. The man's life hangs by a thread. Alex clobbers the man with the stick and sends him flying. Adele's home the next morning. Alex tells Adele. She turns in disbelief. At this moment, Dr. Rigel walks by. Dumas says, Doctor, what is the matter, Dr. Rigel? Dr. Rigel answers, why, he could not have seen plainly last night, and hurrying home, he gave himself a knock in the chest against a carriage pole. He fell on his back and split his head open. Dumas asks, when shall you pay him a second visit? Dr. Rigel answers, tomorrow at the same time as today. Very well, doctor. Tell him from me that last night, passing by the same place where he fell, after him, I found his knife, and I sent it back to him. Tell him, doctor, a man who has no other arms than this with him is unwise to attack a man who possesses 2 such pistols as these. Alex opens his coat to reveal 2 pistols in his belt. The doctor rushes off. Louvain, Adolphe's father, and Dumas sits while he reads. Dumas anticipates his feedback. Louvain to Adolphe, did you make it? No, father, Dumas did. You are writing with Dumas then. In the Villers-Cotterêts forest, Alex and Adolphe are shooting partridges. Dumas, did you know that Adele is to be married? No, I had not heard of it, but it is quite unlikely. Villers-Cotterêts forest. The master of snaring in the region and Alex cut the branches off of a tree and covered the trap with fern fronds. Dawn, when the sun rises and shines on our tree, the sport begins. The trap has caught something. Alex and the snare master have bread and wine, eating the game, cooking over the fire, until Alex hears laughter and violins. He peers through the parted trees, sees Adele and her fiancé. It is a wedding party. Later that evening, Alex heads to Adele's home. He leaps over his usual walls and bales of hay, the back route to Adele's bedroom door. He opens the door. She isn't there. He sits on her empty bed in tears. Later, the newspaper pages appear. The assassination of the Duc de Berry, February 13th, 1820. The page turns. It reads, the death of Napoleon, May 5th, 1821. A third page turns. The French Carbonare movement. At the law offices in Villers-Cotterêts, Alex and his office companion, Pere, file papers. Dumas says, oh, my dear fellow, I have an idea. Pere responds, what is that? Let us go to Paris. There. That is all I possess, Dumas. And you? I have 7 francs. 28 and 7 makes 35. How the deuces do you think we can go to Paris on that? Wait a bit, I know a way. The forest outside Villers-Cotterêts one morning. Pere is on horseback spotting quail. Alex shoots it down. They arrive at the Hôtel de Ville. Pere speaks to the host. Pere says, we wagered that we could go to Paris and back without spending a penny. So we wish to gain the bet by selling our game to you. The host says, I'll put you up, horse and dog included, for 2 days and 2 nights, in exchange for 12 partridges, 4 hares, and 2 quails. Pere and Dumas enter their room. They look at each other and laugh. Paris streets, days later. Alex walks down the ugliest street in Paris. He goes down another passage, which opens up to the Royal Palace. He goes all around it. He stops in front of the Royal Palace Theater. He sees on the poster, tomorrow, Monday, Scylla, played by Talma. Louvain's Paris home. Dumas walks up to a beautiful house. He knocks, waits outside. A heartbeat, the door opens. Then Alex enters and the door closes behind him. Inside, Louvain embraces Dumas. They smile. So you've come to Paris then? Yes, Monsieur Louvain. What have you come for? I've come to see two people, Adolf and Talma. Ah, is that so? You will get on. You have willpower. Go and wake Adolf. He'll take you to see Talma, who will give you tickets. Alex knocks on Adolph's bedroom door as Adolf rubs his eyes. Come in, Dumas. Come, it is really I. Wake up and get dressed. I want to go to Talma. The Royal Palace Theatre. Alex follows Adolf. Talma is washing his chest. The lower part of his body is wrapped in a large sort of white linen. One corner of the mantle he draws over his shoulder. Talma says, "This is the son of General Thomas Alexander Dumas? I remember meeting your father at Saint-Germain." Talma holds out his hand. Royal Palace Theatre backstage later. Alex follows Adolf through the inextricable labyrinth of the Royal Palace Theatre backstage. They come to the great actor's dressing room full of men and women famous or soon to be famous. Adolf says, "We've come to thank you." Talma says, come in. Dumas takes 2 steps forward. Talma asks him, "Well, Mr. Poet, were you satisfied?" Dumas answers, "I am more than that, monsieur. I am wonderstruck." Talma asks, "What do you do in the provinces?" Dumas, ashamed, looks down. "I dare not tell you," then lifts his head. "I am a lawyer's clerk." Alex heaves a deep sigh. Talma says, "There, so be it. Alexander Dumas, I baptize thee poet in the name of Shakespeare, of Corneille, and of Schiller. Go back to the provinces. The angel of poetry will know how to find you all right, wherever you be. She will carry you off by the hair of your head like the prophet Habakkuk, and will take you where fate determines." Dumas and Adolf in the corridor later. Dumas says, "Yes, indeed. I shall return to Paris."